grandmother used to tell me, he said, once we lose our language and our customs and all, says, then we lose who we are. See, we're not what we used to be. She used to say, so we die if we lose our culture, especially our language. That's very important. And young people today, like I said, they aren't being taught, so it's up to the ones that still speak to pass it on to their children and grandchildren. I grew up in a time when our churches were done in our Creek language, and our ceremonial grounds, everybody spoke our language. So I always thought that would be forever. But today, at our churches, they're not even done in our tribal language anymore. And also, our elders are the only ones at our ceremonial grounds that still speak our language. So we have a church out south of well, it's south of here, but it's between Old Malgi and Moores. And I got to see real old folks, and there was two ladies, they actually lived on our church ground. And both of them couldn't speak English. So, I got to see that, and I got to see times when people couldn't speak English. And nowadays everybody speaks English, so.
I'm proud to be a Creek, and I just remember my family just speaking Creek all the time, laughing, and you can tell, to me, jokes are better in Creek than they are when you try to translate it into English. They're not as funny. My daddy used to embarrass me by singing Creek songs on the way to church, and we didn't have air conditioning, and school kids or kids would be out walking the roads, and I'd be embarrassed because he'd just sing them Creek songs as loud as he could, and I'd want to just say, "Shut up!" But of course you never dared.
My grandma and my mom they'd just talk all the time, and then my grandma's brother would come and they'd sit on the front porch and they would talk Creek totally all the time. And I liked to listen to them because the way they spoke was so descriptive and funny and or serious or sad, and the way that they spoke made you feel it. And I miss hearing that because I don't hear that so much anymore, even when I'm around Creek speakers. My grandmother used me for a translator. Although she could speak and she understood English very well, she pretended that she couldn't. So if someone came to our house that was not a speaker, she would have me translate. And she would pretend she couldn't speak English. So that's the way I grew up. And I spoke the language until I went to college, and when I was surrounded more by non-speakers, I didn't use it as much except when I went home. And
my father, he was a minister, I guess you could say. He traveled to different churches and preached. I remember him sitting, my sister and I, out on the front porch, teaching us things to say and how to say it. And we might say it around the table, So Naksiaja. What do you want? We'd say, Ahajalihi, Ashambato. Pass me the potatoes. And they'd go do it, and my dad would say, Ngudorste. You say it right. Ahajalihi, Ashambato. He said, Nagin Hadam, Sagezana. And I'd look at him and I wouldn't say anything. It wasn't just a lesson on Creek. I found out it was a lesson in how to be polite. Ahajalihi Asambalto. Please. Then when my dad died, he was, my mother didn't sit down like that with us anymore and talk to us. She would speak in Creek, and we wouldn't answer. And I guess I lost some of it then, and then whenever I'd go off, my dad taught us what he knew. He used to count our ribs, and he would get on our first rib and he'd say, Hamimi, Hogogo, Ja Ja, Wheela, Hunagila, Hospila, Hatchko, Bididi, Julalo, Dos being 10. And then he'd say it faster. So it was kind of like a song, you know. He'd say, Hamimi, Hogogo, Ja Ja, Wheela, Hunagila, Hospila, Hatchko, Bididi, Julalo, Dos. And he'd count our ribs that way at night before we go to sleep. I don't know what dialect it was.
Well, there was so much discrimination. When we went to Cress's variety store, we had to drink water out of they had 2 water fountains. One said white and one said colored. And we had to drink out of the colored fountain. And so we didn't draw attention to ourselves by speaking the language in public. Because the language was sort of hidden, or it wasn't used in public, the little kids didn't hear it all the time. And then when we went to school, you know, we didn't hear it at all, or we didn't see any native people in the schools at all. So it was put aside, and we used English more and more. And so the younger generations were using English more and more, so they weren't fluent. And my sister was fluent, but she wouldn't speak it until she got with some of her friends who could speak. And I would ask her a question, trying to get her to speak Creek to me, and she'd always answer me in English, you know. It was just accepted that she didn't speak the language anymore. There wasn't any push to keep it going, you know. Now I think there is more of a push on to save the language, and I'm very glad of that. And I tease my grandkids in English, in Mvskoke Creek, and say things to them, and hopefully that will help them pick up words and remember things that I've said to them in the language, so that they can become more familiar, and that's good. That's what I want.
I heard somebody say one time, it's been a few years back, they said, what if the Creator come to you and spoke to you in your language you didn't understand? So that kind of sums up what I'm talking about. And said you didn't know what he said. You'd miss out on a lot of things what the Creator said to you. So I think that's why it's really important, you know. And there's some things that can't be conveyed into English that, you know, we know. So it's just, like I said, it's just, when you lose that, then you lost the whole, to me, the whole purpose of who you are as a tribal person. You know, it's just like I said.
Because inside me, it's who I am. It's my language.
Our ceremonies are done in our language. Without that, if it's done in English, it loses its, I always say, it loses its flavor.
My grandma said that after the Trail of Tears, when they were given their allotment lands, they had like a foxhole, and when strangers were coming to the house, they could see them driving up. They put all the children in the foxhole and hid them because they didn't want the kids to be taken off. And they would be taken off to boarding school and taught how to be little brown white people. At the Mvskoke Creek churches, you'll find just a few preachers that preach in Mvskoke Creek now. We still sing in Mvskoke Creek, but that's, I think it's dwindling. And so that's why I think it's so important that our young people learn and that we encourage that learning. Because we were immersed in it more when I was little, they used more complicated words and more descriptive words than we do now.
But the language that I grew up knowing has been shortened. Not just shortened, but spoken as slang. And I don't particularly like that, you know, because that's not really learning the language. They say they want to teach it right, you know. Well, teach it right, man. You know, don't make up another word for it. That's my feeling about it anyway, you know.
There's so many contractions now. For example, we talk about sofky when it's osofky, and we talk about owa, water, which should be oiwa. So things are changing like that.
There's even words like a pistolamga, which means this flying boat, but that's an airplane. Yeah, so, you know, it's just things like that. And even when the Spanish people first came to among the southeast, among the Creeks, they brought things here that weren't indigenous to this country. And one was a horse. And a long time ago, our people used to say, Ijo Thaco, big deer. Today they just say Thaco. And Flacco means big or large. Ijo is deer. So Creeks first saw a horse, they called it a big deer. But today, everybody just says Flacco for horse. And, but even just, we have words like even waga means cow. We didn't have cows here in America. And when they first brought them over, and Spanish pronounced them vaca. And that waga was the closest thing we can say. So that's why we call them waga.
Automie is a car, which is a automobile, automie, and Jalichka is something that rolls on wheels, so that's a wagon.
Like for the word that you use today for chicken, we say tolosi, but back in her day she would say totolosi, and they don't even use that anymore in today's language. And things that, you know, that were used back when they first came over on the Trail of Tears aren't, well, it's still spoken today, but a lot of it has been lost, and so, and each generation seems to lose a lot of our old words. And it's because they're not being taught.
Well, there's very few Creek that really speak Creek because we're all dying out. I just don't see it coming back good. Because that's how, I remember Dad and them all just laughing under the arbor. They were always speaking Creek. Mm-hmm. So that was over 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now, it's all English down there.
My mom and my grandma could joke and make comments that were kind of blue, but if you translated them, they didn't sound bad at all, but they would say things and we'd all laugh, you know, and people wouldn't understand what we were laughing about. And because you couldn't translate it really to mean what it meant in Mvskoke Creek. I remember one time we were at a church camp and we were making necklaces, and there was a missionary there to save us, and she was making the necklace too, and she said, how do you say this in your language? And this one lady who is notorious for making jokes said akadalka, which means it's hanging down, and you could translate it to be funny, and so the women all laughed, but she couldn't, and she didn't get it because in Creek it sounded, it was funny, you know. The language is not like English. It's not crisp or cut. It's floral. And I remember the old preachers preaching, and you could just imagine what they were saying. You could almost smell what they were talking about, or you could hear what they were saying and imagine what it looked like. And you don't get that in English. But
There's words that have, you know, have really good meaning to it, you know. Anogichka, love, ajaija, taking care of yourself, taking care of people, and just words like, you know, being humble, you know, that's why a lot of our people in the older generations were taught to be that one. My grandmother, that lady up there, she was just she wouldn't say, Mvskoke, Mahagarosa, Mahabanos. He said, to us Creek people, he said, love is kind of like a law. It's a law. I said, and what she meant, she said, you love your everybody, be good to everybody, be good to yourself. So, you know, those kind of teachings I grew up with. So, I really like hearing when they close our ceremonies, somebody will get up and speak and start telling about all the different things. You know, and well, some of the things will say we need to keep these going, especially the language and the ceremonies that we're doing, because that's who we are. Said if we discontinue this and then we just kind of fade out.
So I sit down and I lay back there in the bedroom sometimes and try to remember, because see, I'm forgetting it. I'm forgetting some of these words. I guess I wish I had remembered more of it, but when you don't speak it, you forget it. And I wished it would hang around, stay around, because they're always teaching it at different places. And it's fun to laugh and talk in that language in Creek to me. And when you say what it means to me, I don't know exactly. I just wish we had kept it up and not lose it. But I still think we're going to lose it.
But having lost most of it, I think eventually it will die out because the ones who spoke it will eventually die out, and we won't have anything but the Creek dictionaries to learn from.
I know, like I said, when I grew up, like in the late 50s and 60s, you know, our language is spoken every day. Today it's just very few still speak it. I mean, we still have numbers of people that still speak, but it's not like when I was growing up, you know, as a young man. I mean, I heard it every day, just about all my life, you know, just everybody spoke it. But today it's just, you know, so a select few speak it. But I really can't envision, you know, us losing everything. Like I said, if we do, then we just lose ourselves. Yeah. I felt good one day. I went to the Quick Trip over here, and somebody said to me, "Stone Go," and I answered him, and he was in one of my classes. So that makes me feel good. And it just that, you know, to me, even just a little bit will still be continued for days to come. They always said you have to have two speakers to keep your language alive. And once that one goes, you just have one speaker. Who's he going to speak to, or who's she going to speak to in the language? And when that person goes, then that's it. It might be, you can't listen. You might see it written down after it's all gone, or who's going to say you're right in your pronunciation of that word. So once those speakers are gone, then you have no connection to how it's really spoken. And when you lose that part of who you are, part of you is gone. And my grandma used to say, when you lose all these things, then you're like a dead person. You don't have no connection, no life.
It's difficult for me to really listen to it and then listen to the songs that go along with it. Because it just makes my heart feel good. It gives me it's almost like hearing my heart sing instead of coming through my mouth. That my heart just sings because it's so emotional for me. I have one song. Oh, my God, in God, let me
And what's good is like when you're singing quick songs, like someone can, and you stop, then someone else can just carry it on.